It's January in southern New England. Finally got some snow, and the birds are getting hungry. Let's talk about feeding the birds today. Okay, so 'tis the season. It is full-blown bird feeding season, in my opinion. In wintertime, there's not a whole lot to do in the garden, but there is a lot of enjoyment that can be done enjoying feeding the birds. And especially right now with the snow cover, this is the perfect time to get started. Because in my experience, the biggest challenge with getting started with bird feeding, a lot of people are under the misconception that they get out there, put a feeder out, throw some feed in there. Maybe they buy the expensive seed, and all of a sudden the birds are just gonna flock over. Not always the case. Sometimes it takes them a while to get to see the bird feeders, know the seed is there. It takes some momentum. As the birds start coming, they start going, and kind of the attention that the few birds at the beginning give to the feeder, all of a sudden it draws more attention of other birds. So it really doesn't take that long to get going once they find it. So in this particular case, you pick whatever feeders you want. Right now, we've got a Yankee Flipper and a Yankee Whipper over there. And the one thing I love about them is they just hold a good volume of seed. And they are pretty squirrel resistant. Although my squirrels, just on a simple pole like that, have figured out a way to get around it. But they don't wipe out my seed, so I let them be. Enjoying the birds and the squirrels is fun either way. But in either case, here are some tricks that I have come up with on how to get started with bird feeding. First of all, pick a premium bird seed. I'll show you a couple pictures in a second of what I use. But the key is to get out there, throw the seed around. So not only do I fill the feeders, but I don't even fill them all the way at the very beginning. I mean, that's going to hold like 5 pounds of seed, whatever it's rated for. But the issue is kind of spread around. There's other ones that go through. You can see on the other side here, we've got the absolute feeders. These are the old-fashioned solid metal, great, completely squirrel-proof, trap door on them. But I have a suet feeder and have the heavy feeder there. It moves around, it works, it's squirrel resistant, but I do like the classic feeders that are see-through because the birds can see the seed. And so they know it's there. And that's my experience going through. So what I do when I get into these areas is we just kind of get the fill the feeders, get out space. And then when I've got big parts of snow like this all around the feeders, I kind of sprinkle some all over the ground. It's kind of like doing a welcome mat. I don't do this on a regular basis. We don't want to attract rodents to the area. And so that's where we'll talk about the waste on the bottom for a second. But at the same time, to get their attention, to get the momentum, put the feeders out. Don't start with a big, massive feeder like this. Start with a simple tube feeder. Fill the feeder about halfway, because keeping that seed fresh and not getting wet, some of the less expensive feeders, squirrels can chew right through them. Some of the less expensive feeders spill a lot of seed. And so you can waste a lot of seed getting started. Also, if we get a lot of heavy rains, and the seed can get gunked up. And that's the definite no-no when it comes to bird feeding. Keep your seed fresh. Keep your bird feeders clean. And so clean them out every once in a while. But when you're starting, fill them halfway, but sprinkle the seed around the ground. And especially right now, the birds are scurrying. When there's no snow coverage, the birds have lots of natural food sources, so they're scurrying all over the place. But when there's snow and a lot of the native seed is buried under that snow, it's a great time to get started. So you can put your feeder out, sprinkle some seed around, and then just start the hobby, start having fun. You don't need anything fancy as far as the feeders. If you enjoy it and you build on it, great. But at the same time, just to get started, just keep it simple. Let's take a quick look and we'll go over waste, and that's the biggest thing you want to watch for. All right, so this is quite often what happens inside flower beds where you have the bird feeders. You can see down there that little yellow seed. That's called millet. That is a filler inside the seeds. So whenever we're looking at whether we want an economy feed or a premium feed, the biggest thing is how much sunflower seed there is compared to how much of the millet. Because the birds typically, there are some that want this millet, that little white seed, but routinely they're just kicking that aside to get to the meaty sunflower seed. And so we end up with quite a mess down at the bottom. So that's why those people that need to worry about the mess underneath and don't want all these shells and everything under their feeders, there is shellless seed. And so you can use some of the premium seed. You do pay for the convenience, but it gets rid of all this mess. Now, for most of us, we just put these inside a flower bed, and then as I go back, I can't tell. I don't worry about it. It decomposes. And in the spring, I'm going to be putting a fresh coat of mulch anyway. So I just let it compost. And if it gets thick, I go and rake it up. But in my experience, the doves and some of the ground feeding birds are going to come up and clean up after a lot of this. But if I have a problem with rodents in the area, then I do not do this excessively, and I do recommend trying to keep that clean or invest a little bit extra into your seed to get shellless seed. All right, so this is an example of some of that millet. This is a different type of millet. So you can see this is a premium mix, and when you start getting to the more expensive mixes, it's mostly this sunflower seed and less of the fillers. And so this is pretty much just a millet and sunflower mix. That way some of the birds do like that millet, so they get that. But for the most part, this mix is a heavy sunflower mix. Now, for the person that really wants it clean, these are sunflower hearts. And I eat up all the rip bags. That's why you can see a little bit of thistle mixed in. But for the most part, this is your no mix. Most of the seed, kind of a bad example, that little black seed is Niger seed. That just got mixed in a little bit, but you can see all the white chips. That is sunflower hearts, or sunflower kernels, and that is typically a shelled seed, so it's a no mess seed. And so that's the lifesaver. If you want to avoid any messes, go with something that says shellless. So that's the gist of it. Just get a nice mix with seed. If you're just starting with one, maybe start with a black oil sunflower, or start with a premium mix that has heavy sunflower. If you don't want the mess, go with the shellless. And that's it. Just have fun. It's winter time. It's a great time to kind of get some interest outside, and you can bring those feeders relatively close to the house to enjoy them from indoors. That's it. I hope that helps, and have fun. Take care.